B1 family, welcome to Blacklogic. We understand that institutionalized education is a direct correlation and link to the prison to pipeline narrative, to that perspective that education within itself is free flowing and fluid. And when we think about it, the things that we learn in school are not necessarily the truth, but it's from a perspective and narrative of the Western world and what they want us to essentially learn and to mimic behind. So here we have on education and institutionalized destruction of virtues. Okay. And what is this referring to? The most crucial institution that ought to prepare future generations for these transitions is the least reformed one, the educational institution. And we're going to be referencing the exploration and the discovery of these United States of America, of the Americans, of the New World. Politicians always incorporate education in their campaigns, talking points, not with the intentions of doing anything meaningful with it once they get into office, but to make themselves appear more electable. Their views on education begin and end with one thing: money, stinking money, more funding, better infrastructure, high teacher salaries, as if the only problem with today's education is a monetary one. We know that isn't true. As the old Jewish proverb postulates, a problem that can be solved with money is not a problem at all, but an expense. If the problem with education were a monetary one, we would have solved it a long time ago, but it's not. And Albert Einstein stated that education, what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. A pretty good statement there. I like that. A pretty good statement. Here from wested.org states that schools serving more students, more Black students are less likely to offer advanced courses and GATE programs than schools serving most white population, meaning those very advanced courses, those people who are ahead of the race when it comes to education, organizations like DECA or AVID. They have all sorts of names in different school districts throughout the states. You guys know what I'm referring to. Why are Black students more likely to be suspended? Teacher response to misbehavior may be, contributed to the teacher's racial perception and bias. Teachers as a group are more likely to deem students' behavior harmful or indicative of a harmful pattern when those students are Black. And here's what I want you to understand. This statement here is most closely related to Black students that live in the suburbs, Black students that live in a non-predominant Black area, meaning white, Asians, and Hispanics. Okay, so we have to look at this in totality and education and how this is a direct link and correlation to the school to prison pipeline. Okay, the most significant contributors to educational disparities among the nation's racial and ethnic minorities include poverty, segregation and racial school districting, inadequate language resources for English language learners, bullying, and lack of access to health resources. What we also have to input in this is the disparities when it comes to school funding. Black area schools are not funded as their white and Hispanic counterparts. So there are disparities in education and educational funding as well. Let me show you here about how we still are honoring Christopher Columbus as the explorer and discoverer of America, which we all know now is false. There are narratives and perspectives of Native Americans as well as Africans being the first on this land. So I really want you guys to listen to this news report of a new discovery that life older than what they had in Africa could possibly right here in America.
It's a new discovery that's changing what we think we know about how the Americas were settled.
So there's this team at Florida State University that discovered stone tools alongside mastodon bones. That means they found the oldest known site of human life in the southeastern U.S. Consider that. Think about it for just a second. We're joined now by Florida State University Assistant Professor Jesse Holligan. Professor Holligan, good morning to you.
Good morning to you guys.
So put into just layman's waking up Saturday morning, eating my Wheaties terms, what this means, the discovery of these tools.
So these bones and artifacts show that people were in Florida 1,500 years earlier than a lot of people accept the Americas were colonized. And more importantly, a lot of us were taught that the Americas were colonized by some folks coming through an ice-free corridor from Alaska through Canada into North and South America around 13.5.
So what she's basically stating is that the so-called Mongolian-looking red Native Americans that they traveled through the Bering Strait and through the Siberian corridor, frozen lands and they were the first to so-called settle and or colonize this land prior to Christopher Columbus, dates back even older than that by the way of Florida. And we know south of Florida is what? So this is not alluding to one particular people. We know that the truth is that Africans were the first explorers of the world, the first people of the world. They explored the world, and there's many signs and wonders around the world to show you that Africans have already discovered and explored majority of the world that we know of today.
5,000 years ago, that's what most high school textbooks say. That ice-free corridor wasn't open until 14,000 years ago. This site is 500 years older than that, and in Florida, which is by any stretch of the imagination, kitty corner across the continent from Alaska. So it means that we really have to re-examine how and when the Americas were colonized.
So this is on its face fascinating, but when I look at the pictures and the images here, it's underwater.
Yes.
It's some underwater sinkhole. Is that what we're looking at here?
Yes, it's a sinkhole in the bottom of the Osceola River. The people weren't, however, scuba diving 14,500 years ago. This was a site that would have been an isolated pond about 130 miles from the coast at the time people were here 14,500 years ago, because sea levels were almost 300 feet lower then, and Florida was nearly twice as big.
So what we truly need to understand with this, family, is that education is fluid. Okay, education is fluid. It's not stagnant. There's always new discovery. There's always new information, ever changing, but some things sort of remain the same. So the explorer, Christopher Columbus, it states here, he's known for his 1492 discovery of the New World of the Americas on board his ship, the Santa Maria. Till this day, they are still teaching this lie. And even to this day, America is celebrating Christopher Columbus / Indigenous Day. They do not want to let go of their Western institutionalized racist education system because they're still teaching your children lies. I want you guys to think about this. We knew about Native Americans, we knew about Africans. At the same time, we were still learning about history of America, who discovered America. But till this day, they're still perpetuating this narrative, and we know that this is a lie. Who actually discovered America first? When my wife and I traveled to South Africa, we met a Danish guy. I believe he was from Denmark, if I'm not mistaken. And he was saying, you know who discovered America, right? It was a Viking. In the states we're here, 10th century, the Vikings. The Vikings era expedition to North America are well documented and accepted as historical fact by most scholars. Around the year 1000 AD, the Viking explorer Leif Erikson, son of Eric the Red, sailed to the place he called Vinland in what is now the Canadian province of Newfoundland. So he supposedly discovered North America, okay? So thus discovering America. And when we look at these things, family, you have Christopher Columbus, or you have the Italians, you have the Spanish trying to stake claim of their exploring and finding America through Christopher Columbus. And now you have, you know, the Danes, the Danish, the Vikings, you know, they're trying to stake their claim as well. And we keep going over these different perspectives and narratives, but no one is taking claim to the fact that African people were the first people on earth and they were the first explorers on earth. And now we have DNA, we have fossil proof that Africans, bones, their fossils and things of that nature was here in America by the way of Florida prior to any other group. So this is how the institutionalized education continues to perpetuate lies, okay? And they paint a picture throughout America of Black people, okay? No matter your walk of life, no matter your income status, no matter your class. It states here that in 1970, college students in archaeology, such as myself, learned that the first human beings to arrive in North America had come over a land bridge from Asia and Siberia approximately 13 to 15,000 years ago. These people, the first North Americans, were known collectively as the Clovis people, as that video just debunked, okay? That video just debunked. Now, who was America named after? They say Amerigo Vespucci is generally accepted. The name derives from Amerigo Vespucci, the Italian explorer who explored the new continents in the following years on behalf of Spain and Portugal. Again, these perspectives and lies continue throughout the day-to-day. So when we look at these things, okay, we're kind of laying the foundation. We're laying the foundation of this family because it states here, according to the +1, the earliest dates for habitation of the American continent are below Canada and South America, which suggests that the earliest settlers came from Africa. Some say that the first civilization in America, the omelet culture, was founded by Africans. Others say that the original Maya were probably Africans, and the Aztecs, the Zapotecs, the Toltecs, and the Mayan are urban centers built by Africans or Afro-Indians, okay? So a lot of you people who kind of follow Dane Calloway, you guys understand where I'm getting at when it comes to this. But the point of the matter is that Black people, our heritage, our ancestry, okay, the historical evidence and references is the truth behind the narrative when we state that Africans and Native Americans were here prior to Christopher Columbus, prior to Leif Erikson, and that all these tall tales and false truths is the perpetuation of the institutionalized education of the Western world, okay? So let's move on because there's more to state here. According to the Daily Times, Africans began arriving in the Americas thousands of years before Christopher Columbus, and this is from Google. Some say the West Africans sailed to the Americas at least 180 years before Columbus. In the early 1500s, Africans traveled to the land claimed by Spain in North Central and the South America. Some came as slaves, some came as free people. They worked as servants, interpreters, and soldiers. According to the National Park Service, Isabella and Tony and their son William were the first documented Africans to live in Hampton, Virginia. William was the first documented child of African descent in English North America, okay? Now, a lot of you may be familiar with Ivan Van Sertima's book, Africans Were in the New World Century Before Columbus Arrived in 1492. And the name of that book is called They Came Before Columbus, okay? And if you guys want to check that out, here's a reference to that as well. But there are some things that we definitely need to point out, which are very, very important of the Western world and the lies they have been talking and how that is closely related to the school to prison pipeline, which is a sinister reality that disproportionately affect Black Americans. Now, the system, instead of being a gateway to knowledge and enlightenment, often becomes a pipeline that funnels our young brothers and sisters directly into the clutches of the prison industrial complex. It's a cycle perpetuated by unjust policies. Not only that, over policing in schools and a blatant disregard for the potential of Black minds. But now, here's the kicker. Our education system, purportedly designed to enlighten and empower, okay, and educate, has been complicit in perpetuating this cycle. It's not just about what's taught. It's about what's omitted, twisted, or conveniently ignored. The history textbooks have been serving up a concoction of half-truths and whitewashed narratives neatly packaged to fit a certain agenda. From the sanitized version of Christopher Columbus to the glorification of colonial conquest, our education system has been a breeding ground for historical inaccuracy. Why haven't they teach Black people that the Moors colonized and conquered Spain for over 700 years? Why is that not taught? Why don't you give us all the information instead of directing us and pinpointing us in one direction, stating, oh, Christopher Columbus discovered America. Oh, you know what? Christopher Columbus and the indigenous people discovered America, but no one ever talks about the Africans that also traveled to America prior to those two. How about this? You give us all the information and let us choose for ourselves. But that is not how institutionalized education works, because there is a narrative, there is an agenda to make sure that people know what the Western world wants them to know, and they leave everything out. And this is why certain states, just like Texas, is leaving out the word slave to replace it with laborer, and take out the word slave. This is what we have to understand. It is that they want us to believe that the foundations of this nation were built on virtue and justice, conveniently sidestepping the brutal realities of genocide and slavery and systematic racism and the countless atrocities committed against Black people. How many times have we been fed a singular viewpoint, conveniently leaving out the narratives of those who suffered the most? It is a deliberate erasure of voices that challenges the status quo. Our education should be a quest for truth, not a carefully curated collection of narratives that serve the powerful. Now, in the grand scheme of things, this isn't just about the education system making it innocent mistakes. It's about a deliberate effort to mold minds, to change minds, to confuse minds and brainwash minds in a way that serves a particular narrative. The system, intentionally or not, has been complicit in perpetuating a narrative that demonizes and marginalizes and diminishes the contributions of Black Americans. So, my brothers and sisters, it's time for us to reclaim the truth and our narrative from our perspective that derives from the foundation of truth. It's time to question, challenge, and demand an education that reflects the richness of our history, the resilience of our people, and the truth that has long been surpassed. The education system has played a significant role in perpetuating historical distortions, fostering a climate of ignorance, and contributing to the school-to-prison pipeline. It's time to break free from the chains of misinformation and disinformation and demand out education that empowers, motivates, uplifts, and embraces the unvarnished truth of our truth. So yeah, Ron DeSantis, you anti-woke. I want my people to stay woke. And every now and again, because you stay woke too long, you may get tired, so take a little nap. But stay informed, and let's rewrite our own truth and narrative together. And that is where I land. Be one, family.